Hey!
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thrifty Marketer Talks, episode 57. Right, so my guest has not arrived. This is a really tricky situation to be in, but let's see whether he comes on. Right, so um, the talks have been focusing on multiple topics this season. I have been doing talks on leadership. I've been doing talks, getting guests from marketing, etc., etc. So it's going to continue in the same theme this season. Entire Feb and almost the March calendar is set. I have some amazing guests coming in talking about PR, marketing, and other stuff which is related to personal growth. These are the two areas which I am focusing on. Today I wanted to bring on a guest who was supposed to talk on rebranding. Rebranding is one of those areas where in my career over last 15, 16, 17 years, I have been fortunate enough to be part of 3 to 4 rebranding exercises, right? Rebranding is something which I have even got a job because of one of my previous experiences on handling a rebranding for one of the major brands, right? So I don't want to take names of the brands where I've worked and handled rebranding, but I have handled a rebranding for one of the major firms which had to build their foothold in India in the life sciences space. So launching that product was a big deal. So managing rebranding comes with million pain points. And I have worked with a CEO who has spent 1 lakh rupees on a logo as part of the rebranding, etc. So I wanted to get into the nitty-gritties of understanding rebranding because it can give you nightmares, it can give you sleepless nights. So today I'll be joining with Jim Heininger. He's the rebrand man. He leads the efforts of the Rebranding Experts, which is a firm which he has founded in 2017. After 30 years of experience in business and strategy, a brand strategy for P&G, McDonald's, Anna Bosch, and others. Rebranding Experts was purposefully designed to be the only agency with the comprehensive services necessary to rebrand organizations. Every leader understands the pain of going through rebranding. It's a tough thing. Everybody needs a facelift once in a while. Every brand goes through it, but getting it done in the right way is tough. That's why rebranding experts exist. It starts from a fundamentally different viewpoint than traditional branding firms that see rebranding as a marketing strategy. Jim's team believes rebranding should be a strategic growth accelerator, creating a forward-facing organization ready to grasp new opportunities. He has designed a methodology used by the firm and merged the many disciplines necessary for successful rebranding, which includes research, brand strategy and planning, creative naming, design and identity, corporate and leadership communications, change management, employee engagement, internal marketing, customer experience design, and marketing and public relations. He's a contributor to Forbes, etc., on the topic of rebranding. So I have a set of amazing questions which will address all your queries about rebranding. If you're planning rebranding in your near future, don't miss the episode. So let me bring Jim on. Hey, hello, Jim.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for taking time out. I get a little bit panicky when the guests take a little bit time to join. I had a recent experience. It was supposed to be a leadership expert who was supposed to come on the show. I went live, she didn't turn up. So it was such a. But I'm getting used to it. This is my 3rd year doing this show.
It's like live TV.
Exactly. And I get a little bit panicky, but thank you so much for taking time out. I'm super excited to meet you. We have planned this session before. We had to reschedule a couple of times because of my health issues and stuff like that. I'm so grateful that you took the time out and come here because rebranding is something is very close to my heart also, because I have in my careers I've got opportunity to work with leaders who wanted to do a good job in rebranding, but we failed miserably a couple of times. But
No.
we learned, good lessons there. As the show goes, Jim, I bring on guests like you who are specialists in an area and where people struggle. And I curate a set of questions in that area. And if you're ready, we can start off.
I'm ready.
Absolutely. All right. So let's get right to it. Right. So rebranding. Every brand, if you look at LinkedIn or if you look at any social platform, there is a regular announcement about this is our new logo, this is how we're going to look like here onwards, etc. So, what do you think are the reasons for considering a rebranding strategy?
Well, let me kind of start out too by framing up what we view as rebranding. So, a brand, you're right, every several years needs to be refreshed. It needs to be modernized a little bit. And that sometimes is a visual makeover, perhaps some new marketing language and so forth. Oftentimes we see companies that have to reposition because their product line, their service, what they've been offering to their customer base, it's kind of getting irrelevant, and they need to reposition so that they are better able to deliver to that customer today. We're seeing that a lot in the retail market, places like Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Fitch. They're all repositioning their products and their approach to their customers based upon that changing customer. Then there's what we call a rebrand. And we see a rebrand as standing up an entirely new brand for an organization. So not only a new brand promise, a new name for the organization, the new visual identity, so that visual makeover, but an update to their customer to their customer experience, even their employer brand and how they communicate with their employees. And then all that is launched and introduced to the world as the new company. A good example of that recently is Meta, the Facebook, the new corporate organization that was launched. And then Elevance Health is a good one. It was previously Anthem, which was a provider of Blue Cross Blue Shield products. And they introduced Elevance Health. They wanted to be more than just a benefits provider. They wanted to be a partner, a lifelong partner in your health. So we kind of break it out into those buckets of, so to speak, of what you would call a rebrand. So why would you do a rebrand? Good question. It's really either driven by need or by opportunity. So think first and foremost that rebranding is all about growth. If you wouldn't go to this investment and all this time and energy if you weren't trying to give a good growth accelerator behind the organization. So if you need to rebrand, it's oftentimes things like a merger or an acquisition, new leadership change, maybe that your brand is just, it's outlived its purpose and you need to update it. It's just not working for you. It's limiting your growth even. Right. Then there's the opportunity side. And that's where a lot of organizations are embracing this now. They have a very ambitious growth plan. They've got new strategies in place to expand either geographically or into new customer segments. And that brand just doesn't work for them anymore. But they want to achieve that opportunity. And so they need to look at how they can stand up an entirely new brand.
Right. Absolutely. I'm glad that we are talking about this topic, because it's such a confusing topic for many entrepreneurs I have spoken to, or many of my bosses who are CEOs of brands. It's a very, everybody wants to do it, but nobody knows how to do it.
Yeah,
so that first question set the context right away. Right. So let's back up a little bit. So my question is, how do you define a brand and determine your target audience? How do you do that?
So we see the brand as that collection of experiences, of visuals, of language, of everything that helps you decide that that's what you want to choose over another competitive product. So it's not just a logo. I mean, we have to move beyond that. It's the collective experience that you have with a product or with a service.
Right.
And so if you think about what rebranding and the definition of it would be, means to make anew. And if the brand is the heart and soul of your organization, that means literally standing up an entirely new reason for being for your customers that's more modern, that's more relevant, that's going to last you for years into the future, and introducing that to them.
Right, absolutely. Right. So, as you mentioned about the target audience, etc., you touched upon that. So, I know for a fact that there's a lot of research and planning required in a rebranding effort. So, if you can, take us through what typical steps should be taken when it comes to research and planning phase of a rebranding effort.
So a couple thoughts. We always encourage an organization to do almost a rebranding business case that really looks at their current brand performance. How hard is it working for you? What kind of results? What kind of, is it delivering for the success of your business? And what would happen if you didn't rebrand? So that you can have a kind of a view into the future that determines if you're going to find value in this whole effort. Then when you get into the process, there's a lot of research, as you've indicated. First of all, you really have to understand what are the key differentiators, of your brand. What is it that your customers find most compelling about you that are their reasons to buy? And then look into this growth space that you're going to be moving into. And what are the needs of the customer in that set, so that you're presenting yourself in a way that's going to meet those needs as you go forward. We do a lot of even research within the employee base, to understand what they think the brand is, because what we often find with organizations is they're busy doing what they do all day long, making the widgets or selling the coffee or whatever it is. And they don't spend as much time understanding what their brand is and truly embracing it. So we do a lot of education along the process about what is a good brand, how does it make a company successful, and what's the gap between where you are and what you want to achieve, so that we know how we need to bring people up to that.
Absolutely, you're 100% right. When you say that people who are close to the brand doesn't really sometimes misunderstanding the personality of the brand. I am a marketer, so sometimes I don't think of my brand as an entity. I'm too busy fighting the fires. I am too busy running the show every day. You forget the brand bit sometimes. So that is where all these issues start cropping up, and one day you have to manage that on a major scale. That's absolutely correct way you have put it across. All right. So my next question is, brand messaging and visual identity is a key piece to this, right? So how can you ensure consistency in your brand messaging and visual identity across all channels when this happens?
So as you create that new brand language and you work from that core promise of what you are to customers, and you build out from that in terms of your language set, it's making sure that leadership understands it. And they are communicating that way now going forward, that they're teaching their middle managers how to communicate that way to the full employee base, so that the employees see how it changes their experience with the customer. And if there's a new expectation from the customer as to how, what's going to happen when I buy this product, or when I call for service on something that's broken or whatever. So everybody in the organization needs to know that. So you got to make sure all those different, internal channels, so to speak, are educated, knowledgeable, and then certainly, have a very tight control of how it's presented externally, because the minute you start to communicate it, you're creating an expectation among the customer, and you got to deliver on it. So that's where you got to be ready internally before you go externally. But having tight control, making sure that people are working off the same message book, that they know how to, if challenged, how to answer those questions consistently. If it's social media channels and comments are popping up and so forth, how are those consistently answered the same way, so that your brand, any way you look at it from any direction, is the same to the customer. Right.
Yeah. You touched upon, my next question is connected to that. the selling the rebranding story internally is one of the major challenges. Like the leadership might be having one idea, but the middle management not getting it, or the next rung of the leadership doesn't getting it is a big challenge. I have seen personally, I have faced it personally. It's one of the major challenges. So talking about challenges, what are some of the common challenges companies face during the rebranding process, and how? I know there are so many challenges. You can touch upon maybe one or two or three. How they can overcome those challenges.
So as we were just talking about, probably the first challenge is they don't fully understand what a brand is and how it can work hard to make their business successful. So that kind of education effort is helpful in that. Second, I would say is people really underestimate how much work goes behind a successful rebranding. You can rebrand, but then to make it successful, it requires, a real playbook of activities that leads you through the whole process, and really, nailing each of those steps along the way, because they build upon each other. So, most people don't realize, I got to get my employees ready to go for this. They just think they're going to do it externally in terms of their marketing efforts. It's not sufficient. Right. And then I would say number three is that it's a long process. So one of the challenges, if you're a business that needs to trademark your new name, you have to submit that to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and that can take up to a year sometimes to be approved. And it got really complicated during the pandemic as well too. So here you go through this research effort, you find, you define what you want your new brand to be, you're really excited about it, and then you have to submit a trademark application, and it could be months before that's approved. So one of the challenges that we've tried to overcome is working with the attorneys, the trademark attorneys, is really scrubbing through a search what's out there that may come close to that name, and having a very high probability that it is going to be approved by the USPTO, that gives you the confidence to move forward and announce that new brand before you even get approval of it from the USPTO office. So that's something that when we start to walk through it with clients, they're like, whoa, wait a second. We don't want to wait that long, and nobody does. So how do we overcome that? Through really careful planning.
Right. I remember when I was doing research and I found your profile, I wanted to invite you as a guest. I was really surprised that there are such a niche firm focusing on rebranding alone. So I was so glad to see that in a way, because people who might be watching who are not in the marketing department, or who hasn't done this, may not be able to even comprehend the challenges of a successful rebranding. It's such a crazy process, most of the people think of it as like a logo change, couple of emailers, you're done, but it is much more than that, right? So I'm just so glad that you're here. I'm getting questions from some of the viewers. I'll take it up at the end of the session. Okay. All right. So other thing which most leaders might also ask you, who are your clients as well, how do we measure the success of a rebranding effort? How can companies measure?
It's a good question, because at the end of the day, they want to see a good return on the investment in this as well too. Early in the process, we sit down with a client and go through how are they currently measuring, not only sales and customer acquisition and length of customer and so forth, brand sentiment, all those different things. What do they already have in place that can continue to be used post rebranding, so that you can see what kind of bump you get coming out of it? And if they don't have those kind of measurement tools in place, which are the ones that they're comfortable or can afford, to establish, because you do want to have something that enables you to get your arms around it. All right. What most companies see is this anecdotal response to it when their customers get excited about it. If you're a B2B organization and you suddenly find it easier to talk to your customer, pick up the phone and call them and so forth, because they see that you're responding to needs in the marketplace and really trying to advance yourself. Anecdotal is good. And we always hear, there's a bump afterwards in terms of, the product, the customer pipeline, or, project pipeline that's coming into organizations. It's good to have those rigorous kind of tools in place from the very beginning that you can measure back. And again, it's always important for, if it's the marketing team internally, link it to growth, really make sure that your measurements are tied to growth over that longer period of time, because that's what the benefit of rebranding is all about.
Absolutely. That's a perfect answer for that question. All right. So let's talk about the rebranding is done. So how can a company maintain and evolve its brand over time to stay relevant? Because staying relevant is very, very much of critical importance these days. Customers have a lot of options in the market. There are a lot of competition. The competition in every industry is growing. So how can companies maintain and evolve its brand to stay relevant in their market?
Well, you got to be in touch with your customer. You have to know what's going on with your customer. What are they thinking? What are they doing differently? The pandemic really reminded us all of that, because so many lives were upended, or processes changed, that if you weren't in touch with what was happening with your customer, it hurt. And so hopefully that's a lesson everybody took out of the last few years is, put in place regular monitoring of the voice of the customer. What are they saying? What's on their minds? A regular tool for gathering insight in terms of what they think is important and what the future looks like for them. Because, it's part of the challenge of marketing is always being ready for what's coming tomorrow as well, too.
Right. Absolutely. That reminded me, I'm yet to book a customer experience expert for this season. That voice of customer reminded me of that. I might have to bring somebody on. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that answer, Jim. Let's talk about other aspects of rebranding, right? For example, technology. What role does technology play in rebranding, and how can businesses utilize technology that is available these days so effectively?
So what's interesting is we find with a lot of companies when we're going through this process, and maybe we do an audit of their communications tools or their marketing tools or how they communicate with their customers and so forth, we find that they're kind of behind in terms of the sophistication of the use of technology. And it's a good time to get out and find some of the latest options and the latest, to see the great, way that they can help build your brand, and use those as part of the rebranding launch with which to now engage with your customer. It's a great time to introduce, new functions on your website, new, if it's email, if it's chat, if it's, whatever it is, AI type products. If they improve the customer experience, then the customer is seeing something, demonstrably different as a result of your rebranding. And then they realize that it's whole, it's new, and that's important. So we will always try to recommend this is your chance to catch up. if you're kind of running behind in the use of technology, embrace it now.
Right. I'm pretty sure many companies are behind when it comes to, because that's the way the technology is evolving. Even the top companies are sometimes behind. So it's good to have partners like you who can take them through that journey. Right. So my next question is about communication. Right. For example, communication is key in this whole process. Right. So how can businesses effectively communicate and manage the change with their stakeholders during the rebranding process?
So communications it has to be handled very carefully, because one of the things that you don't want to do if while you're considering rebranding or early in the whole process is talk too much about it, because you don't want to create concern where there's no reason for concern. And you don't want to give your competitors a heads up as to what you're cooking, and for them to take advantage of it in some way, to say, look at the company's in turmoil, they're trying to figure out who they are, this is the time to attack. So you really want to kind of be very careful, keep your communications within just the leadership team for the early part of this whole process. Right. Then when it comes time, and we usually say once we know what the new brand is, and we've submitted the trademark applications, we've secured the domains, and we're going about the process behind the scenes of updating all the different kind of branded assets that are going to need to be ready for launch day, that's the time you start to talk to your employees and to tell them, we're considering rebranding. We think we're going to rebrand. We decided to rebrand, and here's why. And build an understanding and support of why it's the right thing to do long before you tell them what the new brand is. Because once the shiny object comes out, once you launch it, that's going to take their attention. So you want that to land on a really solid foundation of understanding of why we're even doing this and what their role is in it. And I would see the same kind of thing with customers is in, most organizations will hold off on telling customers that they're going to rebrand till just literally right before it or the day that they launch it for that very same reason. They don't want to create question marks. They don't want to create concerns. They don't want to give their competitors a heads up. So again, why are we doing it? What is the new brand? What does it mean to you in the future? And what can you expect of us in our continuing relationship or the continuing, as you buy our products? So it's a very phased kind of effort that tries to keep it under control and tries to make it work, to maximum benefit.
Right. Actually, what I'm hearing is timing of each and every step is critical for a successful rebranding. Timing is super critical. All right. So you touched upon customer. So let me ask you an interesting question here. So is it necessary to incorporate customer feedback into your rebranding strategy? If yes, how can companies do that? Incorporating customer feedback while building the rebranding strategy.
So are you thinking of what the new brand should be, or once we've announced the brand, what your feedback is?
No. The while well in advance, while preparing the strategy. Okay, we are going to rebrand, but before that. Yeah.
Okay. It obviously has to, be focused around the customer. It has to be customer centric. And this is one of the things that we will oftentimes find with organizations, especially if they don't have a very robust marketing operation, is that so much of their language is product or feature related, and it's not benefit focused. It's, it's we do this, and we will say, okay, we're gonna take a big leap here because we want to talk about what is the outcome of, in the customer's mind to working with you. What do they benefit from? And so if they don't have that kind of voice of the customer at that point in time, that's where we go out and get it, because that's where it's going to inform what that language should be. And once they hear, okay, this is what the customer thinks and expects, this is the way that we can present you for the future, it all comes together. All of a sudden, it's an aha moment for many people that they now understand what this branding and rebranding is all about. So, it doesn't mean you have to tell the customer that you're rebranding or you're thinking of doing it. You may do some real, kind of confidential, interviews with some select customers and so forth. But just knowing what they think is the foundation of what that new brand's going to be.
Absolutely. I was smiling because as a marketer, I'm totally guilty to what you just said. We always talk about what our products do. We seldom talk about the benefits, what customers get out of it. So totally guilty of that. Right. So another important question. This question I added based on my experience. When we touch about the subject of rebranding, the first question which comes to most founding members, founders of the company, who is the CEO, is that what will happen to our heritage? What will happen to our history? We have been like this for a long time, and you are suggesting a rebranding exercise. So how can a company balance maintaining its heritage and history while also evolving its brand to appeal to the emerging market?
Yeah, it's a great question. Clearly, there are things about your past that make you successful today. Absolutely. And so it's understanding what those are and really, prioritizing those, because you can't roll out, a list of 50. It has to be, what are the key things that really, and this again is where we ask it of the customer, not of the employee. or the founder, but what is it that makes you keep coming back to this product, to this company, to this service, and taking the best of it and building the new brand around that, leaving a lot of the things that are no longer necessary, no longer, differentiate you in the marketplace, but focusing on the core of what that new promise needs to be. And it's interesting. It's very hard for especially longtime executives to, in a sense, let go of things that they think are important, but that aren't, because, and you can see why they're at this point now that they need to rebrand, is because they're kind of holding on to something from the past, as opposed to embracing the future. So it becomes very clear as to what's the best of us that we want to carry forward and let go of. It's really interesting if you've got a company too that is named after the founder, and you're realizing, they maybe have an exit strategy at some point in time if they haven't left already, but it might be time to let go of that person is not what differentiates you in the market anymore. It's your products, it's your service, it's your experience to customers. So how do you let go of that individual's name and move on to something that's more relevant to your customers?
Right. I can only imagine when you said that phrase. I can only imagine the kind of dilemma you and your team might be facing, because you work with all sorts of companies. You might be facing so many difficult situations sometimes, and while going through journey. Fantastic, actually.
We had an interesting one, interesting assignment where it was an East Coast-based company, a family-owned company. The daughter had taken it over as the CEO. The father was still playing in an advisory consulting role. She's the one that has very ambitious, growth plans. She wanted to rebrand the organization. She thought it was necessary to do so, and we needed to present to him and to gain his support of the idea for us to move forward. And once we built it on the promise of what we're going to be in the future, and then the name that articulated that in a very interesting, compelling way, he said, "Okay, I get it. I get how this can work harder for us now. Go forward. You've got my support."
Right. Solid research, solid communication is needed to get this off the ground for sure. Right. So my last question, before I have one question from the audience also. The last question about rebranding will be, if you can share some examples of successful rebranding campaigns which you have seen and impressed you as an expert, and what made them effective.
So there's one in Chicago where we're based that happened a few years ago that I think I love, and I think it's a great example to inspire others. It was the Chicago Rehabilitation Institute. So this is it's a medical facility that focuses on long-term recovery people from severe injury, and people from all over the country would come there for care and service on their path back to normalcy. And they were in the process of changing up their service delivery model and how they were going to work with patients in a much more kind of 360 degree, with all the different medical specialties supporting and working as one team and so forth. And they rebranded it as the Ability Lab. This is the place where you come to grow your abilities, to live that full and rewarding life again. And I thought it was, because who wants to go to rehab? People do want to go to a place that are focused on that positive outcome of regaining my ability. So I thought that was a beautiful one. We just finished a rebranding for a professional service firm that focuses on kind of executive coaching and talent leadership. And they did a management buyout from their French parent, and the name was BPI Group, which was the initials of the founder. Didn't mean anything to anybody, BPI Group. And we really got to the heart of what is the outcome of their work with clients and coaching executives on how to lead their organizations and how to get the best out of their people and so forth. And realized it was really about kind of creating new futures and bolder futures than what they had in the past. So we were looking at words like brave and bravura and avanti, which is an Italian expression to say let's go, a rallying cry. And we put the words together to be bravanti, and it means to go courageously forward, which is what they do with their executives that they coach. So good example of how you can completely reframe and reposition a company and a new name that really brings it to life.
Absolutely fantastic. But it's kind of a adventurous journey you're taking these brands to, right? Because it takes guts to shed your past and adopt a future, which is exciting actually. Right. One final question. Neil, he's one of the good content marketers I know. So his question is, who are the key professionals working on rebranding? Is it the CMO plus top management, or is it CMO plus external agency with the findings then communicated to the top and middle? How does this ideally work?
That's a great question. I always start with a solid leadership team. The CEO has to be an active contributor to that process, right? Because we can't come back to them and have them, not like, what we've come up with. They need to be an active contributor of it. And It also needs to be a cross-functional team, because this will change. This will result in change through every department of your organization. And so, because it's enterprise-wide. So, your finance team has a long list of things that they're going to need to update as part of a rebranding process, from their contracts to their insurance policies to their banking accounts to contracts with employees, contracts with customers, and so forth. All these different departments need to be involved. So we look at it as a enterprise-wide. Let's make sure that everybody's at the table that represents those different functionalities. We can tell them exactly when they're going to need to, be engaged and what they're going to need to do, but giving them that heads up and that, that involvement on what's happening, and so that they can plan and align their people behind it is key and critical. So the CMO is usually the one that, if they have an internal CMO or a director of marketing or whatever, is oftentimes that representative of the impact in the marketing side too. So we need everybody at the table to make it work.
Right. Absolutely. Thanks, Neil, for that question. So, as I ask every guest who comes on the show, the final question is about them. That's the question I use to get to know them better. So, Jim, your career is nothing short of total inspiration, for people like us. It's you have worked with bigger brands in the world. You have been doing sales and brand marketing and brand management, etc. And now you are the principal at Rebranding Experts. So tell us a little bit about your journey plus rebranding journey. How did it start and how is it going so far?
So I came up through the strategic communication side of things, working at PR agencies for a number of those blue chip brands. After 25 years of that, I went to in kind of a higher gun role out at McDonald's Corporation, working on some major issues that they were facing that were really pulling down their kind of corporate reputation. So it was, not only kind of communications, but also what changes needed to be made internally to be able to address those. When we finished those projects and got everything resolved, I wanted to go back into the agency environment, and they said, Jim, we will support you with work to come if you want to open your own firm. So I was able to do that with McDonald's support, which was absolutely terrific. We took on some rebranding assignments from clients early on, and that's when I began to realize there's a lot more to this process than what clients even realize they need to do, and that current kind of marketing firms and branding firms were offering. And so that's when we sat down and we actually did a study with clients or companies that had rebranded, not even our clients, and asked the tough questions about what were the obstacles to success, what were the challenges, what were the potholes along the way, and built our methodology on that then, so that it includes things like change management, like HR expertise, Because, you really need to figure out how you're going to change the culture to support the new brand as well, too. So you need HR's involvement, the finance, the legal perspectives, and so forth. So built the agency then to be able to deliver on that. And it's been a very fun ride. I really enjoy the clients that we get to work with. Most of them contact us in kind of a stealth discussion because they're thinking about rebranding. They know that they need a partner that has some experience rebranding. So their current marketing agency might not have that. And so they reach out, they find us, search rebranding, specialist, experts, whatever. We pop up, they call and they say, very privately, we're having this discussion. What is it you guys do and how could you help? And that's where most of our leads come through because nobody goes out and publicizes that or issues a giant RFP if they're going to rebrand unless they're a nonprofit organization or a government entity or something like that. So we're doing some great work for clients and it feels good.
Absolutely. I think the business world, the corporate world needs firms like Rebranding Experts for sure, because rebranding or certain aspects of branding as well as customer experience, these are areas where people have no clue what they're doing. They need experts to come in and take them through that journey. So I'm glad that you're doing this, and I got to meet you like this, and you took time out to come on the show, and I really enjoyed the discussions. Thank you so much for your time, Jim, and hopefully we will connect more in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so that was Jim Heininger. He's the principal at Rebranding Experts. Check their website out, rebrandingexperts.com. Fantastic methodology, phenomenal body of work behind them. If you're a firm in US or anywhere in the world and thinking of rebranding, please check them out. They can take you through that tough journey. It's gonna be a fun ride with them. All right, so that was episode 57. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, there are so many amazing guests. I can't wait to talk like Jim, right? So I have somebody coming on and talking about thought leadership for B2B brands. Next week, I think, I have ex-US Army sergeant coming and talking about PR strategies on a cost-effective budgets, etc. So totally amazing February, March lined up. So I hope to see you all here. Thank you so much for watching. This video will be available on my YouTube channel tomorrow or day after. I'm traveling tomorrow, so that may not be possible. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you all soon. This is the Thrifty Marketer Talks. Take care.